There have been a couple of articles drop in the past 24-ish hours that really sort of serendipitously coincide to shed a little light on how the Kansas City Chiefs, who have won 9 consecutive AFC West titles, who have been to 7 consecutive AFC championship games, who have been to 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls, who appeared in 3 consecutive Super Bowls, and who have 3 rings during the Patrick Mahomes era. These same Kansas City Chiefs, who have all of those accolades, might be getting even better. And it should be no surprise if you have followed the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL draft. The first article that we're going to look at, we're not really going to look at the article as much as the graphic appended, which is in coordination to or I guess the part of the graphic that is the Kansas City Chiefs portion of the graphic. My mouth got ahead of me there. What it highlights are the Kansas City Chiefs' best players under 25. And then we have an article from from Arrowhead Pride, that talks about Brett Veach's best draft picks. And guys, the one thing that really stands out about that article is that Brett Veach might be getting better at the draft. But how do these two things coincide? Well, we'll get into it in a moment. But looking at this chart from PFF, the Chiefs' best player under 25 should come as no surprise. It is Trent McDuffie at 24 years, 11 months. The cornerback is a .6641 PFF WAR, which is wins above replacement, and he has himself a 90.1 PFF grade and has played a whopping 3,332 snaps thus far in his career. That is not the same for Leo Chenal, who is 24 years, 10 months, a month younger than Trent McDuffie, who has only, however, played 1,346 snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs, but has performed admirably in that time with an 85.9 PFF grade. But without all of the time on the field, that WAR drops to a .1259, which seems to be one of the vectors for, or probably the vector for, coordinating this list. The top one is the best WAR, the bottom one is the worst WAR. And down there at the bottom, 23 years, 7 months, we have Felix Anudike Uzama, who has played just 583 snaps in his young NFL career. But along this continuum, we do have Xavier Worthy, only 22 years, 4 months, who's already played 903 snaps in the NFL through his rookie season and earned himself a 72.4 PFF grade, even if it's only a .1019 WAR. That will come with time, in my opinion. Sky Moore pops up on the list somehow, some way. Sky Moore, who has been a Kansas City Chief for a number of years, still under 25 years old, 24 years, 11 months, 963 total snaps, nearly eclipsed by the snap count of Xavier Worthy only in Xavier Worthy's rookie season. Sky Moore with a 58.4 PFF grade. However, he does have a .0185 WAR. Jaden Hicks is a name that I expect to skyrocket on this list. 23 years, 0 months. We are in the month of his birth, apparently. So happy birthday, Jaden, if we have gotten there already. And even if we haven't, 469 snaps in his rookie season, a 75.1 PFF grade, .0184 WAR. He is going to be, in my opinion, an absolute star for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jared Wiley played only 97 snaps. Carson Steele played 210 snaps. CJ Hansen played only 31 snaps. all three of those guys in their rookie seasons last year. Jared Wiley and CJ Hansen, 24 years old. Carson Steele, 22 years old. Then we get to George Karlaftis, who has played 2,807 snaps, 24 years, 5 months old, a 63.0 PFF grade, and a negative WAR. I don't think there's too much to be read into that. And the final player that we have to mention on this list, somehow, some way, Siaki Ika is under 25 years old. In the back of my mind, Siaki Ika was like 28. I have no idea why I thought he was so old. I think it's because I root for the Kansas City Chiefs to pick up every 330-pound defensive tackle that ever becomes a free agent, and sometimes those guys blend together in my mind. Just for a reminder, however, Siaki Ika, 6'2" and 7/8", basically 6'3", 335 pounds. And he does have 32 3/8" arms, 10 1/4" hands, and a 40-yard dash at 5.39, which is exactly what you would expect for a defensive lineman who weighs 335 pounds. But moving on, and the reason I put these two together, this article from Arrowhead Pride ranking the Chiefs' best draft picks under GM Brett Veach. What have been the best picks in the Kansas City Chiefs GM's amazing draft record, from Arrowhead Pride by Nate Christensen? It is completely understandable that no picks from the 2024 draft would be on this list. That wouldn't make much sense. They've had one season to prove something. Draft picks from 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, you would expect to be sort of evenly distributed throughout this list because those players have played out their entire rookie contracts. 2022, we know that was a pretty successful year, and 2023. So those are the kinds of 2022, 2023, not quite yet full rookie contracts for those players, not a completely fair chance when compared to players drafted earlier. But if you also follow the Kansas City Chiefs, you know that is unlikely to be the case. Just in order to keep your mind ready for what we're about to see, should 2022/2023 be overrepresented here, it would suggest, especially because they've not finished their rookie contracts, it would suggest that, it would suggest that the Kansas City Chiefs general manager Brett Veach is getting better at drafting, right? And if Brett Veach is getting better at drafting, better at acquiring younger players to play for cheaper contracts for longer periods of time than signing free agents, then those same Kansas City Chiefs that have won 9 consecutive AFC West titles, been to 7 consecutive AFC championships, been to 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls, been to 3 consecutive Super Bowls, and have 3 rings during the tenure of Brett Veach and Patrick Mahomes / Andy Reid, you would expect that success to continue, if not to ramp up. And of course, the best draft pick here is Trent McDuffie. Makes sense. Pick 21, first round of 2022. You can argue that Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey were better values, but I'd still take McDuffie over them. Whether in the slot or outside, McDuffie is one of the league's best corners. He's done everything at an all-pro level, making him a true shutdown cornerback against any player in the league. The Denver Broncos' Patrick Surtain II is the only other player in the NFL who can make that claim. That is a good enough reason for me to agree with Trent McDuffie being the number 1 best draft pick of Brett Veach's career. Notice also, he's the highest draft pick of Brett Veach's career, 21st overall. The Kansas City Chiefs have consistently drafted late. Now, the next player on this list we did not see in that earlier graphic. Why? Because he's 25. That graphic was players under 25. So Creed Humphrey barely missed that list. Pick 63, second round of 2021, a second rounder. Something very important for the Kansas City Chiefs. Should they wish to continue this run of success, they will be able to draft later in the process, finding starters, finding stars. Still taking the NFL's best center in the second round could push Humphrey to number 1. Since he was a sixth round pick, I wouldn't quite quibble with Trey Smith at number 2 either. I just think Humphrey is a higher caliber player. I will agree with that. But, quickly turning around, number 3, Trey Smith, who also, from that earlier graphic, does not count because he is 25 years old. Still just 25. Pick 226, the 6th round of 2021. Smith is certainly the best value on this list. His force and strength diversified is the Chiefs' running game, changing the team's entire offense. While he's capable on zone runs, few players are better maulers down the middle. Absolutely, Trey Smith deserves to be on this list. Also, from that 2021 draft, Nick Bolton, who also doesn't count because he is 25 years old, does not count for the PFF graphic. Just missed out on that. Pick 58, the second round of 2021. You could put George Karlaftis here and I'd be fine with it, but I choose Bolton because generally his impact on the defense is higher. He's always been a great tackler, but he's made underrated improvements in tackling, in taking on blocks, and playing in coverage. The coverage thing I don't think I agree with. I'm going to be real honest, I watched too many tight ends, absolutely destroy the Kansas City Chiefs last season to believe that any of these linebackers are all that great in coverage, maybe not any of the safeties either. But here's the thing. There are plenty of us that remember how long the Kansas City Chiefs have been very, very bad at linebacker. We remember Marvcus Patton, who was a serviceable linebacker. We remember Greg Minuski. We remember so many names who were rolled out there onto the field and did not quite measure up. That is not the case with Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton stepped onto the field as a rookie, a very young rookie, and absolutely dominated in the running game. Maybe not the passing game, but made such a large difference on this defense, was such a steadying force at that middle linebacker position that he proved to be the linchpin turning point for the defense writ large. He proved to be that stake in the ground from whence this defense became what it currently is. 2021, pick 58. Defensive end George Karlaftis, pick 30, first round of 2022. So far, we're looking at a lot of players from 2021 and 2022, which means they are either under 25, just at 25, and also they were drafted fairly recently. The former Purdue defensive end will never be a superstar, but if he plays in Kansas City for 10 years, he could pass Justin Houston, 78.5, for fifth place among the team's all-time sack leaders. Karlaftis is as steady as they come, a B+ in every aspect of his game, as a complimentary player who rounds out the defense. He's been fantastic for the Chiefs. Here's my question. While he did appear on the under 25 list, this blurb suggests that he will never be a superstar. Maybe that's true. Certainly, he doesn't have a whole lot of superstar measurables or etc. But we've never seen George Karlaftis with a particularly deadly weapon across the defensive line from him. Chris Jones, for sure. But Chris Jones, every offensive line in the league is pretty adept at being able to deal with one superstar and one pretty good player. The Kansas City Chiefs at the second defensive tackle spot and the opposite defensive end starting spot for the entirety of George Karlaftis' career have been, lacking. However, they did address both of those spots in this past draft with Omar Norman-Lott and Ashton Gillotte, two players who, I have to say it, have more juice than any of the players that the Chiefs have drafted at those positions since adding George Karlaftis in 2022. So, it could be that this is the year where we finally see a little bit of attention taken away from George Karlaftis, leaving him in one-on-one matchups with offensive tackles, leaving him in isolation blocks, etc., that allows him to really show a little bit more of what he does. And if there is a pressuring force from that opposite side of the line, one thing that George Karlaftis is absolutely great at doing is setting the edge. So, while and whereas he might not be the fastest guy off the ball to the quarterback, if the quarterback is run out of the pocket towards George Karlaftis, he will be waiting there. Wide receiver Rashee Rice, who was not on the PFF list because he is 25 years old. Pick 55 in the second round of 2023, already on this list. Pick 55, another second rounder. Really, if you wanted to get specific, if you wanted to really sort of bite down and chew on Brett Veach for a little while, you'd be chewing on his first-round picks, not his second-round picks, maybe his fourth-round picks. But for the most part, the second round has been gold for old Brett Veach. Now, what do we say about Rashee Rice? If we were projecting a bit more, I might push Rice a little higher, but we need more sample size to really evaluate him. Just the same, his explosiveness after the catch is rare, and he appeared to be on the verge of a huge breakout before last season's injury. This is true. He was on pace to have an amazing season. At the moment he was injured, he was either first or second in the NFL in receiving yards. I can't remember which, but it was very, very impressive. And I think that this will, should he return from injury and not have an incredible suspension to serve, be a breakout season for Rashee Rice, especially noting the speed which will appear on the field with him. Jalen Royals a 4.42, Xavier Worthy a 4.21, and Hollywood Brown a 4.27. That should leave a whole lot of stuff open underneath for Rashee Rice to take advantage of. Number 8, linebacker Leo Chenal, pick 103 in the third round of that 2022 draft. My first 7 picks have been pretty typical, but from here on, you could make some other arguments. While Chenal might have a smaller role than some other players you could place here, his down-to-down impact is higher. The Chiefs continue to find more ways to leverage his insane strength and blitzing potential. I hope they find a way to do even more of that in this 2025 season. I think that it could be the difference for the Kansas City Chiefs defense to get back to that mid-50 range in the sack department. Something they have lacked. They lacked last season, whereas in the 2 consecutive Super Bowl wins, they were in the top, I believe both seasons in the top 2 for sacks. Cornerback Jalen Watson, number 9, who doesn't count because he is 26 years old towards that PFF graphic. Another 2022 draft pick and a 7th rounder. I could easily flip these last 2 picks. I have Watson here simply because I think he has been better than Isaiah Pacheco. He's been a steady starting corner who's never had a long slump of bad play. For a non-elite cornerback, that's a tough task, but year after year, Watson has consistently delivered strong performances. A very interesting case for Jaylen Watson. If you remember, last preseason, the Kansas City Chiefs seemed to want to have absolutely anybody claim that cornerback 2 spot except for Jaylen Watson. Jaylen Watson went ahead and took it anyway. I've been a huge fan of Jaylen Watson since the moment the pick was made. I didn't know a whole lot about him at the time of the selection. Went back and looked at his college tape and thought, this is a guy who has all the measurables to start. And little did I know that it would be week 1 of his rookie season that he ended up winning the game with a 99-yard pick six. I believe memory serves me correctly on that front. But Jaylen Watson has been underrated every step of the way. And I am looking forward to this season because this season could be a definitive exclamation mark for what it is that Jaylen Watson brings to this defense. If he stays healthy and he's on the field, he's earned that cornerback 2 spot. He is a guy that there's not a lot left for him to learn, right? He's entering the final season of his rookie deal, and he's got all the size, he's got all the measurables. This could be the season that he breaks out. And finally, Isaiah Pacheco, the final name on this list, number 10, doesn't count towards the PFF graphic because he is 26 years old. He is another pick from that infamous 2022 draft, another pick from the 7th round of that draft. While some things frustrate me about Pacheco, I'm there with you. There's no doubt that he's been an excellent pick. He's been the starting running back on 2 Super Bowl teams and always brings it in big games. His toughness and physicality flow through the entire offense. Pacheco is a tone setter, a rare trait for a running back who isn't a star. Absolutely. I do think that he's going to have a little bit more he's going to have a little bit of competition at that running back position from a fellow 7th rounder from the 2025 NFL draft, but that comes in perfect time as this is Pacheco's final season of his rookie deal. And guys, all of these players, 2021, 2022, 2023. Now, I skipped the guys who did not fit that mold, right? They had L'Jarius Sneed on this list. That might be the only name that I skipped, honestly, now that I'm looking at it. Yeah, L'Jarius Sneed was number 2, was it? No, L'Jarius Sneed was somewhere on this list, which is a good pick there. But another thing to note, Trent McDuffie, defense. Creed Humphrey, offense. Trey Smith, offense. Leo Chanel, defense. George Karlaftis, defense. Leo Chanel, or whoever it was earlier. Leo Chanel, defense. Jaylen Watson, defense. Isaiah Pacheco, offense. Rashee Rice, offense. It might seem unfortunate that Patrick Mahomes has a general manager who seems to be better at drafting defensive players than offensive players. But guys, we saw early in Patrick Mahomes' career how difficult it is to win with a super-powered offense and absolutely no defense. So I think that while Mahomes can be a force multiplier, it makes a whole lot of difference for your general manager to be able to draft cornerbacks like Brett Veach does, to be able to draft defensive players like Brett Veach does. That is very important towards the sustainability of an absolute dynasty. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.